My generation frankly got seduced by Reaganomics, Thatcher. We bought into this notion of simply if I work hard, study hard, we have the pathways to success with our economy, and I can turn my proverbial rags into riches.
We believed that if we let companies do what they wanted and got government out of the way, that was somehow going to create a kind of freedom and better wages for all, and it turns out that that's just not true.
Cut in the tax rate.
Serious financial crisis.
Shutdown is now in its third week.
Substantial spending cuts.
Last week, the stock market soared to record highs, highest ever.
We had this shareholder revolution.
Shareholder first ideology.
Another record all-time high.
Where that companies prioritize what benefits shareholders above all else.
Highest ever.
All-time high.
Before the 1970s, about half of every dollar of profit was reinvested into the company, into workers, their wages, maybe benefits or hires. Nowadays, it's less than 10%. We know that wages are flat. Average wage these days is about $44,000. That is actually not that different from what it was in the 1970s when you account for inflation.
If all the money spent going to shareholders in the last 2 years had gone to workers, for example, in the retail industry, every worker could have gotten about a $10,000 annual bonus.
You know, I don't use the word radical because nothing that we're talking about or proposing is radical or out of the norm.
We have been here before. We have seen levels of wealth inequality that look like this. We have seen levels of hopelessness and poverty that compare to today. And we have, as a country, taken action to tackle national challenges.
Give me your help to restore America to its own people.
What we're really talking about is reclaiming an American vision of a government that serves the will of the people and can do great things to improve all of our lives. This is going back to an era where we led the world in establishing high schools and had the most educated population on the planet. Going back to an era in which we invested in new technology so that our industries were the most cutting edge. This is really an essentially American idea.
What we need is a progressive 1-2 punch. We need to curb the concentration of power in our economy. We need to think about the influence of money on policy making.
From the corporate sector and the elite,
they're able to pay lobbyists, influence the decision-making of public sector employees. They're even able to buy research at think tanks that supports their point of view.
They need to be working within a system of government. That means taxes. That means regulations that are going to encourage them to invest in research and development.
That's the first punch. The second punch is
reinvigorate and actually reimagine government.
We need to reimagine public programs.
Invest in education and roads and bridges.
We need a policy and a politics that meets our moment. Voters were telling policymakers in the last 2 elections just how bad it is out there for them. And there were very few policymakers that heard them. What voters want is transformational change that shifts the balance of power in this country. And that's why the Roosevelt worldview is so critical.